Hey guys, so we're finally here at the Metal Liberation Army arc. Took long enough, and okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the leap backwards in time of 2 months ago that pretty much Bones uses to kind of explain the whole discombobulated way they've handled this arc flip. And I know that kind of sounds weird to be the first thing to talk about, but it does pertain to a lot of my overall thoughts in this episode. Because the thing is, initially, I was kind of in favor of this idea of having an arc flip in general, but the more I thought about it, and especially after seeing certain aspects of the Endeavor Agency's arcs adaptation and this episode play out, I realized just how much this whole swapping arcs idea had flopped. Because it's one thing to say how it feels like Re-Destro didn't really even get the proper introduction that he got in the manga. But the bigger issue is that after reading the manga for as long as I have, I began to realize Kohei Horikoshi's writing is so ingrained in the style of moment-to-moment storytelling and events happening back to back of each other that the anime flipping the arcs around was just never going to work. I mean, there have been isolated moments in this season that are great. However, because of how certain scenes and moments played out in the previous arc, there's kind of a predictability factor how that kind of undervalues this arc in the anime. And but the weirdest part is, even if the movie and the pacing of this season weren't factors in how it affected this arc, I think Bones still would have swapped these arcs around just for how this arc ends. Like the thing is, the end of this arc is kind of the perfect way from which to end an anime season. So it's like, despite all these problems I'm bringing up with it, I don't see the arc like I don't see the anime changing much either way, regardless. Like, I think the only thing that would change, again, would probably be some pacing, honestly. Um, Now, which, yeah, let's talk about that, because this chapter kind of adapts the back section of chapter 220 up to the beginning portion of chapter 224, which you can tell Bones is trying to play catch up now and just hope they can make it to the finish line of this arc. And but at the same and like, it's clear as day that's what they're doing. But one thing, but honestly, weirdly enough, just based off this episode, I'm kind of hoping that Bones is actually going to like find a way in order to fit the rest of chapter 220 like pretty much somewhere in the next episode because the thing with this episode is that it really just kind of thrusts us head first into the league fighting it just thrusts us head first into the league fighting into the league fighting Gigantomachia without a whole lot of context. And the coinciding chapter 2020 does provide that context while also giving us one of the greatest moments from Spinner overall. So yeah, so overall I have to say that this episode as a whole is a very rocky start, to say the least, to do the Metal Liberation Army arc. Um, now with that said, the one of the key things to talk about with this episode is pretty much Dr. Dharma Ujiko, the doctor who we've seen been working with All for One in the beginning of the series. And for those wondering if it's the same doctor who told Izuku he was quirkless, it's one of those odd situations where there are very heavy indicators to believe it's the same doctor, but at the same time, it's not necessarily been confirmed in story either, unless Horikoshi said something that flew under the radar. But yeah, that aside, his introduction shows him pretty much posing his version of the question Izuku's gotten about being the symbol of peace. But to Shigaraki, it's the question of what are you willing to do in order to become the symbol of evil, the void left by All for One, which pretty to which in terms of Shigaraki's response, he pretty much answers to destroy everything, which is something we've seen him say before, obviously, but this time he's saying it with the conviction of someone who firmly believes this world and system of heroes is so rotten to the core that the only thing that can fix it is a mass culling restart, like absolute destruction of everyone and everything that this world represents. And the thing is, obviously we are meant to very fervently disagree with his plan to destroy everything, and that it's not the right answer. But the thing is, at the same time, there is the thing with what Shigaraki says is there is a tiny speck of truth to what he says at the same time, in the sense where at this point a shock to the system like that might be the only way that true changes actually happen, because the thing about Hero Society in its current form now is that even though it has changed in response to villains like Stain and whatnot, those changes inevitably get folded into the status quo of the world at large. So the world at this point, it needs a gigantic ass shock in order to wake up and realize that this hero system isn't exactly as long lasting or as ground or as firmly rooted in instability as much as we might like to think. Now, I guess if I did have a technical problem with the conversation between the Doctor and Shigaraki, is that they kind of rushed through it, and I felt they could have got given more time to let certain scenes and within that conversation sit and breathe more, because this was a big impactful moment in the manga, but the anime. The anime. I don't want to say that I don't want to ever say that the anime treated it like an afterthought, but it did feel just like just a pretty much minor moment in the grand scheme of things of the episode. Like everything else felt like a pretty much bigger moment compared to that single moment. And again, that conversation is key because it shows just to what lengths, just how much Shigaraki has grown and to what lengths he's willing to do in order to achieve his goals and his ideals and whatnot. Um, with that said, if I were to give a genuine bit of praise to this episode without criticism, one thing this episode does really well through the introduction of the Doctor is that it ties together the events of the Pro Hero arc and Endeavor's fight with High End into a neat little package, like specifically how and why more sentient Nomus have been popping up, as well as how Dobby got a hold of one as well. Like, it's little things like that that really show just pretty much how interlinked the Pro Hero arc was to pretty much like pretty much the beginning of this arc as well. Um, it was also it was all from it was all from the Doctor that this is actually and it was all from the Doctor, and it's all thanks to the Doctor that this was even possible to begin with. And that is actually one area where I do admit the pretty much 2 month like leap backwards into time does kind of work a little bit, just a little bit, because it pretty much does show that this pretty much happened. This pretty much happened like during the time frame of the Pro Hero arc. In fact, one thing I love about this episode as a whole is how we are starting to get more individual perspective from the League, and just what their thoughts and feelings are in the current state of things, and just how uncertain their future is. And yeah, we quickly, of course, we also quickly transitioned from fighting Gigantomachia into the Metal Liberation Army's leader, Re-Destro, contacting the League in a very gruesome way by seeing Giran's fingers scattered over every area where the League has conducted one of their operations. And with Re-Destro's role in this episode, his whole thing is basically saying, move aside, League of Villains. Your time is done. The Metal Liberation Army is going to take control of dismantling Hero Society. And the thing is, like, again, Re-Destro isn't even giving the League a choice. Either he wants them out of the way. He just pretty much wants them out of the way. Period. And showing Giran's fingers scattered over the city was his way of proving the Liberation Army's capability of doing this, but also the capability of destroying the current system, but also destroying the League as well. Like, he's basically, like, it's basically Re-Destro flexing, I've got the motherfucking power, you guys don't. So just accept your defeat, move over. The League of Villains time is done. It's Re-Destro and it's Re-Destro and the Meta Liberation Army's time to shine and destroy this world kind of thing. So yeah, I like how it is kind of a reverse of the of the whole thing with Overhaul, where even though he offered them a chance to join them, this guy's just saying, I'm gonna destroy you all. I kind of love that turn. um and obviously Shigaraki responds in kind by declining to not only confront the Meta Liberation Army, but also also lure Gigantomachia to their front door in the attempt to use them in his task of subduing him. But one thing I do want to focus on with this is Twice's reaction to all this, because to me this should have been the very first sign of what would be, to me, of what would become of him, of his fate, and what would become of him much later on in the series. But I think at the same time, even though I wasn't fully aware of the path Horikoshi was mapping out for Twice, I didn't want to believe it either. But revisiting just this moment of him begging to go save Giran, really is kind of bittersweet, not only from knowing just how much Twice sees Giran as a friend, but also there's a little tragedy now to seeing this side of Twice, because it's a reflection of just how naturally kind and trusting he really is. And ultimately, what that leads to really kind of got me feeling a certain way. Like, it's unfortunately kind of, yeah, I can't say anymore without giving away spoilers, but yeah, just, yeah, it's really kind of sad with Twice, honestly. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Analyst, Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, and just share this video around, guys. Death Knight with me, signing off. Later, all.